Please rewind this cassette.
Hi, welcome to Box Office Addict, my weekly podcast where I break down the weekend numbers and kind of just discuss where movies are at right now. So this is episode 93, which, like, holy shit, we're getting really close to 100. I would also like to announce that this Sunday, I will be doing a Box Office Addict for Rise of the Skywalker in its opening weekend. That'll be episode 94. So tune in for Sunday night. It will not be during the day. I'm going to get off work and then come here and immediately either do a live stream covering it, or I will record a video and give my thoughts on its opening weekend, because, that's really the big discussion of the year, is how that's going to perform. So please come back on Sunday to see my full analysis of that. The story of this weekend is, of course, Jumanji: The Next Motherfucking Level. I guess they took it to the next level. So here's a funny thing. The original Box Office Addict that, not the original, but the one that covered the first Jumanji sequel, Welcome to the Jungle, which was Box Office Addict 25, is the biggest viewed video on my channel. It has 365,000 views. I've made like $200 off that video. I added 1,000 subscribers from that video. And even just recently, and I'm assuming it's because the sequel's coming out, that video has just in the last month received 50,000 views, more than what it had previously. Outside of that, the Why Rose Doesn't Work video from The Last Jedi is my most viewed video. So it's a pretty big deal. This movie was very good to me. Or this franchise, the Jumanji franchise, the new version of this franchise. And if you remember, I actually did a review for that movie, and I gave it a positive review because it was a surprise, and I think it was for a lot of critics. I think most people thought that was going to be some shitty, poorly written cash grab that was taking an IP, but everybody was surprised that it actually had, some decent jokes in it. The cast was terrific. Jack Black was funnier in that than he had been in years. And the movie almost made $1 billion. It made $962 million, but, I think the highest estimates for that movie were like $400-500 million. Nobody thought that movie was going to blow up. It became one of Sony's biggest films, so of course they were going to make a sequel. Jake Kasdan has returned, the son of Lawrence Kasdan, who also worked on Freaks and Geeks and a few other movies and shows like that. So the surprising thing, or I guess unsurprising thing, is that this movie opened really well. Now, the question is the Star Wars movie coming out here in a week going to take all the momentum away from this? I don't really think so. Now, this opening weekend isn't as impressive as the previous Jumanji film, just because that one had a surprising opening weekend of 36 million and then 50 million over the 5-day, where this has done about 60 million on opening weekend. But still, these are great numbers. The previous film cost anywhere from 90 to 150 million dollars, depending on what source you read. I'm assuming this film cost 150 million dollars to make, because I'm guessing that Sony expects this to make $700 million at a minimum. And the reviews are okay, but it's not nearly as positive as the first film. But before we get to that movie, let's cover some of the other films and do some catch up on ones we've talked about over the last few weeks. And then we'll talk about the success that is Jumanji: The Next Level. So let's talk about Uncut Gems from the Safdie brothers, which opened to 537,000 at 5 locations, which is a great number. And this is a good sign for this movie's opening weekend. Although the Safdie brothers, I don't know if they make movies that really connect with the mainstream, but this did result in a theater average of 107,000, which is terrific. Joker is at $1.06 billion worldwide. That continues to be one of the biggest hits of the year. We're going to skip some of these other movies. Let's go to A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which dropped 37% and is at $49 million domestic. It looks like $60 million is kind of out of question unless it gets a huge boost from Christmas. That's unfortunate. Queen and Slim dropped 46% and is at $33 million domestically. I don't know what the budget for this movie is. I'm assuming somewhere around $20 million. Ford v Ferrari gets closer to $100 million as it passed $98 million this weekend. It's at $185 million worldwide. That's on a budget of $97 million. With the holiday boost coming up, this movie should be able to make, $110 million domestically. Black Christmas, a new version of Black Christmas after we got a Black Christmas over a decade ago, opened to an abysmal 4.2 million and only cost $5 million to make, but this is still a bad opening. The original Black Christmas by Bob Clark is one of my favorite slasher films of all time. And I think there's elements of it that I prefer to John Carpenter's Halloween, but, of course this was a bomb. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with this. These kind of horror remakes like this specifically don't do well. Richard Jewell from Clint Eastwood opened to a pretty disappointing 4.6 million. It doesn't look like that's going to do so well. Although I saw someone say, what was the last time Clint Eastwood had a hit movie? And I was like, Sully in 2016. And he starred in The Mule last year, and that made $100 million domestically. So Clint Eastwood still has successful movies. And American Sniper was the highest grossing film the year it came out, which I think was 2015 or 2014. So I don't know. It's something where people, I don't know, because he's conservative, people are trying to attack Clint Eastwood. Knives Out made 9.1 million this weekend, 35% drop. It'll definitely make 100 million to 110 million. It's at 163 million worldwide. That's a $40 million budget, so this is a success for Rian Johnson and Lionsgate. It'll definitely pass $200 million at the box office. Frozen 2 continues its crazy run, although it is slowing down a bit. 45% drop is actually pretty steep when you consider how good its second weekend was not too long ago. $19 million this weekend. It's at $1,035 million worldwide. It's the sixth film this year from Disney to make $1 billion, which is a record. The previous film made $1.2 billion. This will at least match that. I don't know if it'll actually surpass it at this point because it does seem to be slowing down, but we do have the holiday boost coming. But who cares? The movie's made $1 billion. If the budget's 150, 180, $200 million, Disney's already made a profit off of this, so there's nothing really more to add to this. It made a lot of money, and it made a lot of money fast, where the first Frozen made money gradually over a period of time. It had these big holds in Japan over several weeks and just held really well in the States, and it kind of, slowly got to its final total, where this film made most of its money in the first 2 to 3 weeks. So, of course, it's going to be slowing down a little bit. This movie was much more front-loaded than the original Frozen, which could be the case for Jumanji, which opened to 59.2 million. Now, here is the thing. Going into the weekend, the estimates were somewhere around 45 million. Then they were saying the movie was going up to 50 million. And then by the end of the weekend, people were saying this is going to make 60 million. So that's a positive sign with word of mouth and with hype around this movie, that every day into the week, it gradually went up on its estimates and then did better on the opening weekend than expected. Now, I could have definitely seen this movie opening to 65, 70 million just with how successful the previous film was. But still, having said that, it is a positive sign. It's already at 62 mil domestic, and it's already at 216 million worldwide. Now, on here it says the budget's 125 million, which I can believe. That makes sense to me. So if that's the case, with a $200 million opening worldwide, there's no reason that this movie shouldn't be able to make $500 million worldwide. I don't know if it'll reach the domestic total of their previous film, which was like 404 million. But even if this just makes $250 million domestic, and then let's say another 400 or 500 internationally, but this should at least make anywhere from $650 million to $700 million worldwide. The thing is that the first movie overperformed. It really shouldn't have made $1 billion. I'm not saying in terms of quality, just, that was a big surprise how well that movie did. So this movie doesn't have to perform on par with that. This movie doesn't have to make $1 billion to be successful because, like I said, that film was an overperforming film financially and critically, where this film, if it makes 650 million or 700 million, that should be what it makes. That seems right. You know what I mean? Like that's probably what a Jumanji movie like this should make. So if this movie doesn't reach the heights of the previous film, I just think that's people not being fair to it and the performance of that film and how special that actually was. I even remember an interview with Jack Black on IMDb where he said he didn't expect it to be as big as it was, that nobody did. I mean, he thought it would do well, but that it turned into, a huge movie that made $300 million in net profit for Sony, which Sony doesn't get net profit like that very much. Now, including this and Spider-Man Far From Home, Sony has a pretty good year just with those two titles alone. And then, of course, they have... oh, wait, I don't think they release James Bond anymore, distribute it. So at least they have these franchises right now. And that was the thing I said in my review in my original box office analysis, is that they now have a franchise with this movie because that one did so well, and it's very clear here. And this is a big deal for Kevin Hart, The Rock, and Jack Black because they all need this franchise, with Hobbs and Shaw underperforming just because its budget was so high. The Rock isn't going to be in the Fast and Furious films anymore. Kevin Hart has modest successes to very good successes like Ride Along. And Jack Black really isn't in a lot of hit movies much anymore. He had a little period there, but this is a big franchise for all of them because they could make 3 or 4 of these movies. And let's say the third one in this series only makes 500 million. Well, that isn't going to disappoint anybody at Sony. And then they could even make another film out of that, and it could make 450 million, as long as they never get the budget up to like $200 million. And maybe if they add some new additions to the cast. I know they added Danny Glover and Danny DeVito, the 2 Dannys. But if they add a new big comic actor name into the mix, they could really bring in some box office. But I think there is some magic lost here because the previous film, it was a sequel to Jumanji in a lot of ways, but it was this reboot, it was this reimagining, and they did do something different with it. They didn't just cash in on the IP and do the same movie over again. It wasn't them playing a board game. It didn't have Alan being a kid who gets taken into Jumanji and comes back as an adult. They did something different by having the kids go into a video game world and inhabit these adult bodies, where this movie does seem very familiar to the previous film. They are going back to the video game world. They did change it up with it being, older people, with it being the 2 Dannys in the body of The Rock and Kevin Hart. But that's the thing about it, though. The teenagers being in the adult bodies, the Breakfast Club thing, I think was a more interesting plot twist. And I think, like I said, was just a surprise where, they're trying to just say, okay, well, let's do what we did before, but now they're old people. So I do think they lost a little bit of that spark that made the first film such a hit, where I think this is getting such a reception because people are going to see this movie because they like this cast so much together in this franchise. But still, this is a great opening. A $216 million worldwide opening is phenomenal. And like I said, $500 million should be a lock. So this is a success, a big success. And even if Star Wars takes away some of its box office, it should still appeal to the family market, which I'm not really sure if Star Wars is going to appeal to that family market in the same way. So kudos to Sony, kudos to Jake Kasdan, the cast, and everyone associated with this. This was, it happened a couple years ago. You had that hit movie, and you're getting the benefits of that right now. You have another successful movie. It also shows to not just let an IP die, that you can actually do something new with an IP and make a different kind of movie. They're like, let's not make a board game movie that comes into our world that's a Spielberg-esque adventure film by Joe Johnston. Let's do a video game movie. And that was the thing about that movie. That was one of the only movies that really captured the fun of a video game. Even if it stuck to a lot of the simplistic things for normies when it comes to video games, they made a video game movie. And they're doing that again. So you could really call this a video game franchise at this point, is the way I would argue it. Let's look at Parasite's at worldwide. It's probably at 121 million. That's exactly where it's at. That's going into the Golden Globes, where it got several nominations, and the Oscar nominations will be coming out soon. Jojo Rabbit's at 19 million. That film did not perform nearly as well as I think they thought it would. Honey Boy from Shia LaBeouf is at 2.6 million. Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. Let's see where that's at worldwide. 487 million. So if that could have crossed 500 million, that's definitely not a bomb, but domestically it underperformed. Let's see where Terminator's at. Terminator's at 260 million worldwide. That's got to be one of the biggest disasters of the year. Charlie's Angels, our old friend, is at 57 million worldwide with a $48 million budget. That's so fucking embarrassing. The Lighthouse is still in theaters and has made 10.6 million, but it's only made 48,000 this weekend, so it's done. Motherless Brooklyn only made 9.2 million. Let's see where Downton Abbey ended up. Downton Abbey worldwide made 188 million. Those are very respectable numbers. I think I saw this on DVD at my Walmart today. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. 141 mil domestic, 371 million worldwide. Looks like it should be able to pass 372 because it's right there at that 999,000 mark. That also looks to be getting several Oscar nominations. See if I'm missing anything. Let's see if Doctor Sleep made any more international. Still around 71 million with that $50 million budget. Yeah, Doctor Sleep is a real surprise how poorly it did. I guess you could blame marketing. I don't know. Zombieland Double Taps at 120 million with the $42 million budget. That movie did fairly well. No Safe Spaces, Waves are both at 1 million. The Good Liar is at 16 million. Harriet is at 41 million. Let's see where that's at internationally. Only 200,000. I don't know if people around the world care about that story as much as people in the States. Let's see if Midway made any more money. $113 million worldwide on a $100 million budget. That's another bomb. So there's a lot of bombs here. Here's the story of this weekend. A couple years ago, Sony successfully rebooted the Jumanji franchise with a big name cast, and they are benefiting from that right now. Disney has its $6 billion movie. Rian Johnson has a hit movie outside of the Star Wars franchise. Clint Eastwood has another disappointment. Black Christmas didn't even need to be made, even on the low budget. We have some decent holds from some other movies like Ford v Ferrari and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And then, of course, you have the bombs that have been bombs over the last few weeks, like Charlie's Angels and Midway and so on. But I also want to point out Uncut Gems, which goes into a wider release here during the holiday, which some people are estimating to open to $14 or $15 million. So if that movie can open to those kinds of numbers and make more money, this might be the film that takes the Safdie brothers out of the indie scene into the mainstream. Which is what I'm hoping is going to happen. And I will definitely go see that movie, and I will definitely have a review for you, hopefully before the end of the year. But if not, I will have to save it for the beginning of next year. And then, of course, at some point, I will be doing my top 10 list for 2019, and hopefully a best of the decade list at some point. Although that really is going to have to take some time, because I really got to think about what movies to pick in that, because it's like, God, there's foreign films, or do I just talk about American movies, and then there's documentaries, and then animated films. So there's a lot to cover with the best of the decade, because I saw so many movies. So that's going to take a little while, but this is a great thing for Sony, and this is a big hit for Jumanji right before Star Wars, and they really needed this, because the story over the last few weeks has been Frozen 2. So right before Star Wars comes out, and that's going to be a fucking thing, just from what I'm reading about it, like, holy shit, what's that going to turn into? But I will be doing a spoiler review, a live stream spoiler review of Rise of the Skywalker after I get out of the theater on Friday at 10 o'clock. There will be a Box Office Addict on Sunday, and there will be a formal review that will be edited and have a little bit more structure to it, because it won't just be stream of conscious like I'll be doing on Friday. That'll be posted next week. So if I don't see you guys over the holidays, even though you'll get some Star Wars content before then, I just like to say Merry Christmas. And everyone who stuck with Box Office Addict through the last, I guess it's been, 2 years now, 2.5 years we've been doing this, at least 2 years. Thank you for sticking with this, and I can't wait to get to episode 100. And it's just pretty crazy to me that Jumanji video did so well. Like I said, 365,000 views. And just looking at this now, there's a continuity to life, and there's something kind of emotional about this for me, that we get to come back around and all that. But I've been doing a lot of Christmas shopping. I've been really busy. I've been trying to keep the reviews coming out frequently. And I hope you guys can be patient with me. And I know some of you miss the humor and pacing of Box Office Addict. It's become a little bit more analytical and straightforward, and more about me talking fast like this. But that's kind of what I always wanted the show to be anyway, was just being a breakdown and a brief, just a brief look at what's going on over the weekend, and keeping up with everything, because I know for a lot of you out there, you don't want to go through all this bullshit and read articles like I do, or find out budgets and stuff like that, and I don't blame you. But yeah, if you like that Jumanji film that came out a couple years ago, here's this one, which I probably won't be doing a review for. So if you've seen the movie, tell me what you think in the comments section. what you thought of it, and what do you think about this opening weekend, and more importantly, how do you think this film's going to perform with Star Wars coming out, and what do you think is going to be the final domestic total and worldwide total for this movie? Because I'm really curious what you guys think, and whoever gets closest in the comments section, I will announce you the winner in a couple of months. Why don't we play a game with that, and maybe you'll get some sort of special prize. Anyway, if you listen to Box Office Addict, if you watch Box Office Addict, if you rub it on your tongue before you go to bed, that means you're probably a BOA addict yourself. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'll see you guys on Sunday for episode 94, where we will be breaking the fuck down the opening weekend for Skywalker, which should at least be $200 million, but it's going to be more than that. I'm just not going to be talking about the box office. We're going to be talking about the box office of this entire trilogy. We're going to talk about the box office for Rogue One, and we're going to talk about the box office for Solo. And I will also be answering questions that will be given to me throughout the days about my feelings on Rise of the Skywalker. And maybe we'll talk about The Mandalorian a little bit, even though it's not over yet. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.